Gentlemen, thanks again for being on the show with me. Remind everybody who you are and what you do for a living. Greg, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Greg Williams, former soldier, former copper. I'm in the training space teaching human behavior pattern recognition and analysis and bird dogging around the world with my dear friend Brian Marren.
And I am Brian Marren, Senior VP of Operations for Arcadia Cognerati. That's our training and consulting firm that Greg was just talking about. And we are considered experts at human behavior pattern recognition and analysis. So all things human behavior, human performance in terms of cognitive performance related, that's what we do.
Very cool. And I will say that normally when you guys have been on the show, we pick a topic and it's kind of serious and we go in depth on it. And today,
Sure.
while what we are going to talking about does have serious applications, I kind of wanted to talk about something different because I felt like you guys, when you talk about, urban myths and all that sort of stuff, really kind of fits into your wheelhouse. So today we're going to talk about some spooky stuff.
Cool.
So my first question is, and I don't think I'm the only one. If I am, you guys are going to tell me. Why does my brain like try to spook me so much? Why do I get that creepy feeling like when I'm working late at the office and all the lights are off? Why is it that I'm imagining that there's some three-headed monster that wants to come eat me? What
Right.
is that about?
So I'll tell you the first thing, you pick up on something that a lot of people see during the day, but they don't pay attention to it because the lights are on, it's daylight, and they're surrounded by people. I'll give you an example of that. I know that you've had an occasion to be walking around with your friends or friends of the show, and for example, you're going to go and have lunch at a restaurant. And as you're walking and you're talking about a very detailed topic, you start walking into the front of the restaurant, and all of a sudden there's that uncomfortable moment where you look around and you're like, oh my gosh, what were we just talking about? The idea is your amygdala, part of your limbic system, is set up to sense make the environment as you're moving around through the environment. You got to remember, there was a lot less to attend to a couple thousand years ago, right? So what happens is your brain is trying to send you a message. Hey, shut up for a minute. This is a new environment. Let's take a look around. And when the brain says look, the entire back of your head's a visual field. The brain means look, listen, smell, taste, hear your environment very briefly so it can sense danger. So imagine being in your office late at night. Now it's dark. There's nobody else around. You can hear every creak of the floor and the wind blow and every other thing. So your amygdala is still sending out, let's say, tens of thousands of messages for every message it's bringing in. Why? Throwing a rock in the pond, sensing danger. So now you're heightened alert. You're more aware. And what was that? And as soon as you say what was that, you're done for the rest of the afternoon. So these primitive survival instincts are all around us all the time. Deja vu is a perfect example of it. Don't I feel like I've been here before? Doesn't matter. Your brain is trying to stop at the right floor on the elevator to warn you of impending danger or opportunity. Brian?
Yeah, and I totally agree with everything Greg said. And you notice right off the bat, he tied it right to survival. So we're
And food,
wired.
because
Yeah.
it's almost lunchtime.
Well, survival again, right?
Yeah,
So you have to
you're
apologize to
exactly
everyone.
right.
I've kind of got a head cold here I'm dealing with, but so hopefully I'm making sense. But the idea is our brain is just wired for survival, and in fact, it's still running on that same operating system
Right.
that it was thousands and thousands of years ago when we had more natural predators in our environment. Life wasn't so easy, so it's all still there, and one of those things causes us to sort of um why do we anthropomorphize animals? Why do we think, oh, that dog's doing exactly like this? We have to make sense to our brain. We attribute agency to things that don't necessarily have it. Why? Like when
Exactly.
you hear something go bump, or the wind blows some leaves but you didn't know the wind blew and did it, you automatically suspect, oh my god, there's a person there. Well, why? If you didn't do that, the human race would have been decimated a long time ago by predators, because that was the biggest thing in our environment back then. We had to be able to go, all right, wait, what is that over there? Is it trying
Right.
to kill me? Right? Is it going to attack me? Is this another tribe that I don't know about? So all of that is still kicking. So we automatically start to think, oh, I know what I saw. It was there. And it's
Mhm.
like, well, you saw maybe part of that you experience, but whether or not that was actually there, a lot of that your brain fills in, and simply for the purposes of survival.
Okay.
So, Andy, let me add to that something, because your question begs a full explanation. You always have the best questions. So I know, and I'm going to go to your feelings, because if you can feel it on the show or at home, then you'll understand what we're talking about scientifically. So there's a certain set of drugs that are in your brain, electrochemical neurotransmitters, that force you to remain asleep. That's why you're all groggy when you get up and
Hmm.
you stumble into the bathroom and you hit your knee on the bedpost and things, because they want you to get sleep. Why? Your brain and how it processes its environment is so important that if you don't get a third of your life at sleep, then you're waking up and making mistakes. So in addition to that, you also have a startle reflex that when you hear something nuanced in your environment, you're up and you say again, what was that? And then the wife and the kids are up, right? And you're up all night, like searching for what that noise was, and then putting your smoke alarm batteries back in or whatever it
Yeah.
was that startled you. So when you're used to an environment, your brain tries to keep you asleep, but it also knows that anytime it hears something that's new, nuanced, novel, it's going to get you up right away to warn you. Those survival mechanisms are so important. And Andy, what do people do? They drink before they go to bed, alcohol, or they,
Hmm.
take other mind-altering substances, and they wonder, well, I haven't had those experiences. Yeah, of course, you're inhibiting your brain's ability to
Okay.
sense make an environment. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. So let me ask you this. You talk about we have the whole primitive brain, we're wired
Yeah.
for survival. So in the dark office, I'm working by myself. Why is it, and I guess my weird personality, why do I imagine that there is something supernatural, not something logical? Like, oh, hey, there just could be a burglar breaking in the back. No, no, that didn't sound like a burglar. It sounded like a vampire because I know what vampires sound like. Why does my brain run to that?
That's great. So, Marren, can I ask you a quick question? I know it's
Please.
unscripted. Marren, have you ever seen an owl in real life?
I have.
How big are they?
Huge.
They're huge. So, Andy, if you've ever been out in the woods and you've seen an owl at night move just from one tree to another tree, it's the Mothman prophecies.
And
It's the
and
worst thing
and
in
you
the
can't
world.
hear it.
And
There's dead
right,
silent when they fly.
and
Mm-hmm.
but with your brain, okay, over time, not during the event, because during the event, a bunch of things happen, and we're men, so parts of our body shrink up really fast and make our, we're scared of the environment, and then we're starting to look around, and fight or flight takes over. A whole bunch of things other than Maslow. Maslow is a joke. Come up, and when you're in that environment, here's the thing: what do? At the moment, you go, "Oh my gosh, I'm thankful it didn't tear me apart." Then you run into your friend and you go, "You wouldn't believe it. This gigantic thing just swooped down." Then, hey, Bill said, and a gigantic thing, it starts growing a mind of its own. So we're guilty of that. And I love the supernatural reference because a lot of stuff is amazing. God is so amazing to bring the sun up and put it to sleep every night. But then when we learn more and we get a little bit older, we understand that part of that's based on the rotation of the Earth and our rotation in the Milky Way, right, in our own galaxy. So what happens is I agree with you, Andy. I think it is supernatural. And so the first thing that you think of isn't, oh, that must be the cleaning lady. It is Cerberus, the three-headed dog from hell, keeping the zombies across the river Styx. Why? Because when you thought about survival in your earliest days, it was binary: threat, no threat, run, don't run, eat, don't eat. And so I think that our brain just oversimplifies us in the moment. And acoustically, we're hearing more because it's quiet now in the office. There's no background noise. Visually, our visual field can pick up on light, motion, and edges better in a dark room. So I think that all of those magnifications just make it come at you even more so. Give you a quick thing just on Greg. I love horror movies. Horror movies are my favorite movies, and I hate gory slashing cripe and tripe that they put on, and everything has to be at dark. The best horror movies in the world are those ones in broad daylight where you see it coming, and it's a psychological thriller. So, psychological thriller, that's what you hear at home.
Hmm.
That's your personal ghost.
Yeah, and it kind of depends on what your experience is and what you're thinking about. So, of course, right now around Halloween, where all that's
Oh, yeah.
happening, like what do we start? And now the ghost stories come out. Now this happened,
Yep.
and then so we make these. You say the funny things. Why don't we look at things like in a logical manner of what it could be? It's like, well, humans are not logical things, bees at all. We're
Just argue with
so
one.
we're so we're so emotion based that
Right.
it clouds our judgment in those situations. And then you have things like there's sociological imperatives. So I have to fit in, and I
Right.
have different social contagion where you go, oh my, that happened to you
Hmm.
too. Oh my gosh, that must be the same thing. Now that's when that urban legend starts to form. Now
Right.
that's the Loch Ness monster. That's the Bigfoot. I mean, that's how they start as one person. You can go back and I forget the name of it, but the guy who originally, like when they started using the term UFO, that's not what he said. And then it like
Hmm. Okay.
started to get change over time. And then someone called this and it's like, no, The entire term UFO was made up from some reporter hearing something wrong and misreporting it on accident, and now that went to something else. I mean, that's where all this stuff came from. So you can, and especially with urban legends are my favorite, because you can go back and trace like they don't, the person that is murdering people up at Makeout Point, over the city. It's like, well, yeah, of course they did it, because they didn't want high school kids going up there and doing things they didn't want high school kids going to do. So of course that's going to grow, and people are going to perpetuate that myth to scare people out of doing something. So yeah. I mean, we have this sort of draw to, our brain is wired to come up with stories to understand a situation, and it's based solely on survival. And so we will come up with some crazy stuff sometimes just to make ourselves feel better almost.
Okay. So, all right. So, Brian, that tees up my next question that I want to ask you, that I have wanted to ask you guys for a year. I was afraid to ask you in person at the training because I thought you'd think I was stupid. You can think I'm stupid. That's totally fine.
No, we think you're crazy. We never have thought you were stupid, Andy. We love talking to you. We just think you're a little out there.
Yeah.
That is fine. Okay. So the question is, given the human's narrow functional field of view, and that our brain really does make up a lot of what we see and all the stuff that you just talked about, is it even possible for somebody to see a ghost?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Here's the first thing. I would ask everybody that's listening or watching, by the way, great show. We're huge fans, and you know that, so everybody else keep tuning in. Go to the bathroom, turn on the brightest light that you can in the bathroom. I'm not talking like a Klieg light that melts flesh, but I'm talking like a good cosmetic mirror light that your significant other probably has. And go close enough to the mirror and take a look at your eye, meaning take a look at the things that house your eye. So we all know how the eyeball works. We all took that in physiology. But you have hairs from your brow. You have hairs from your lashes. You have little things that are stuck in it from walking around and working in a dirty environment all day. And what happens now, you understand that your peripheral vision is cycling through potential danger cues. So anything moving, you start to orient on. So what happens is all of a sudden you have shadow people. Well, the shadow people is a hair and an imperfection in your eye, and one of those little floaties that Stewie on Family Guy talks about all the time. But it's close enough to you that it startles you when you look over, and now it's gone. Well, clearly, again, must be supernatural, because I know that I saw it. I saw that shadow, but now when I look at it, so we have to come up with an answer for that. So my laundry room is a portal to hell. And we start building on that, because you know what? Last time I was in a laundry room, I stained my perfect shirt, I stubbed my toe, and my kid, blew out all the power because they put a wet jacket in. So anything that happens, reinforce it. You heard us talk all the time about how biases, and a cognition bias is where we only search for evidence to fit the rule, right? So I would say that first take a look at what it's not. And then the other thing is that your imagination is amazing. Every song and poem and story and all these other things start with something like that, where you got surprised by an eyelash, but then when you looked, it was gone, and you create a narrative around that. Now, I know, Brian, you probably don't agree with all the hair references, because you are like a Bigfoot. It's getting better. He says he cut it. I don't see a difference, Andy.
I cut like a couple inches
off. I was actually going to ask you, man, how long you're going to let your hair go, but I do think it has been cut. I see it.
Yeah, it has been. No, I agree with what Greg said, and to answer your question, yes, it's possible for you to see a ghost. Now, it's not a ghost, but it's something your brain made up, and we again, it's sense making in our environment. You have a bias to see human-like features in different things. That's where you get the, oh my gosh, it's the the Jesus in the piece of toast. You know what I mean? The lady pulls out the toast over, like all that stuff. You have, we just look up Gestalt psychology. There's a whole science behind how your brain kind of does what's called reification and redenigration, and how it makes that order out of chaos. And you'll find patterns, and look up one. It's called the Dallenbach cow. And like, once you see the cow in this weird image of black and white, you can't ever unsee it. That's all you see, even though it's just a random spattering smatterings of different, black and white shades. But the idea is it's all part of it. And again, we have to be able to see what's in there. We have those biases for that. So if it's cognitively close enough, it resembles this. And then, you know what? I was thinking about my dead grandma the other day. So, oh my gosh, it must be her telling me something. I mean, we do that all the time as humans.
So imagine this, Andy. You know that when you're out on the freeway driving, one of the bad things that happens is accidents occur.
Mhm.
Well, in your primitive brain, the functioning survival part of your brain that was built first, what happens is nothing in our environment flew or ran or moved faster than around 33 miles an hour. 33 is
Mm.
a hugely important number if you spend a lot of time studying psychology or sociology or physiology. And so when you're going down the freeway, what happens when there's an accident that doesn't obstruct anything in your lanes of traffic? It's way across the freeway, and you think we call those looky-loos. Well,
Mhm.
looky-loos, or whatever your term locally is for it, is your brain saying whatever's over there is an important survival gem. And
Mm.
so I
Mhm.
need to slow my vehicle down so I can turn my head, eat the popcorn, and take a look at what's going over there and process information. And what does that do to everybody? Everybody slows down. And some genius will tell you from the motor whatever division, oh, it's because people are interested and they see the lights and they do that. No, again, this is a psychological and physiological imperative. What can I learn from that incident across the
Mhm.
street there? And we go stupid. You know that. You've seen people that are rational in every other part of their life, but then there's some accident on the street and they all stand around in a circle and stare at it because that's your brain going, etch this. Remember the old Flintstones cartoon where when they had to write a note or take a picture, everything was with a hammer and chisel?
Yeah.
That's how your brain works. When your amygdala tells your limbic system this is important, it carves it in stone and then spread loads it all over your brain so you don't forget the cues
And
or the warnings that come with danger.
and because most of our observations are based on things we've seen before in the past
Yep.
as a
Mhm.
comparative baseline. I mean, it's like you're bringing up the exact reason, or you've seen there's been a police shooting where the
Yep.
police officer shoots the guy, but the guy had a cell phone he pulled out of his
Mhm.
pocket, not a
Right.
gun.
Right.
And you're going, well, how could you do that? Like that police officer saw a gun. He did not see a cell phone. He saw a gun because every training situation he'd been in, right, where they went and did that, well, the guy pulled out a gun and he practiced that. So his brain said, I got it. I know what's happening next. I'm going to fill in this piece of information so you can be faster on the ball and not be killed. Well, it didn't take the time to sense, make, and problem solve and look at for what it actually is. So, I mean, that's an extreme example of
Right.
what we're kind of discussing right
Right.
now.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I've heard that sort of stuff discussed before, that we really are just kind of making up what we don't know is there. So I had an interesting experience once, and I want you guys to help me break this down. This is the closest thing that I have to a ghost story that I can share with you. I was doing a shoot, a video shoot for a plantation home out in the rural South. Not a great looking plantation home, nothing like Gone from the Wind. It was just kind of like an old farmhouse. So anyway, it's like Tuesday morning in the spring, 10 a.m. We're unloading all of our stuff onto the porch of this house. My friend Scott is like, "Hey, I'm going to go move the car around. I'll be right back." Cool. So I start moving the stuff around, and I get that feeling on the back of my neck that is usually associated with knowing that somebody is walked up behind me. Just
Right.
kind of that weird thing. So I'll pause my story here. What is that happens? What is that feeling that I get when somebody approaches from behind if
So
they're
you're
really
you're
there?
you're back to amygdalic reactions in an environment because you're not completely at home at that environment and it was newer to you. What happens as you move through the environment, certain things register again, and I'm oversimplifying with limbic and amygdala, but close enough for our discussion today.
For me, yeah.
If you're in danger, the amygdala takes a lot of messages from your hypothalamus because it can heat you up instantaneously in nanoseconds. So if you add that feeling of being compressed with that feeling of heat, all of a sudden it's as if somebody walked in behind you and breathed on your neck.
Hmm.
Think of where those things are physiologically. Now, look, I'm the first to tell you, as a scientist, you give me good, compelling information, and it lasts through scientific scrutiny. I'll change my opinions and I'll believe it. And God is great indeed, and He's got the power to reach down and flick you on the ear and give you your own personal miracle. But most of the stuff that happens, and certainly what I think I'm hearing you explain, is a function of being new in an environment
Mm-hmm.
and your brain saying, don't step on that rake, it's going to smack you in the teeth. Those type of feeling. And there's a physiological reason that we could point to that makes you feel in that manner.
Okay, cool. So that makes me feel a little bit better because I've always kind of trusted that feeling just a little bit,
Yeah, of
knowing that
course.
it's not going to let me down. So
Right.
I have the feeling, and I actually believe so much that it's my friend Scott who's returned. I say, "Hey, buddy, would you forget?" I turn around and there's nobody there. I was
Right.
like, well, that's weird, whatever. And I just kept thinking about it, going, hey, that feeling never lets me down. That's weird. So we continue on our shoot. And my friend Scott was like, man, hey, man, I think people are watching us. And I'm like, well, there's like a kitchen staff here. They're prepping for an event. There are
Right.
people here. It's like, no, no, no. I think there are eyes watching us. And I'm like, okay, man, sure, whatever, because what? So we interview the owner later, and then as we're packing up and leaving, Scott gets brave and he asks, like, hey, is this place haunted? And so the lady just smiles at us and says, oh, what did you see? And come to find out, there's a little girl that supposedly haunts the house, and one of the places that
Right.
she's frequently seen is the front porch where I was, where I had no idea any sort of urban legend existed there. So now I'm sitting here thinking to myself, wait a minute, was there something just a little bit more to that?
Right.
Or did my brain just let me down in that situation?
Yeah, yeah, but I don't think your brain's letting you down.
Yeah.
Look, Brian and I know you. We've eaten meals with you. We've had marginal conversations all the way up to full-blown, in-your-face arguments. That's how you really get to know somebody. So we know that when you bring something up, that it's well-researched or it actually happened to you. So we believe that. Why would that be a bad thing? So if your brain finds a way to lubricate a message to make sure it's Andy personal, it's stamped for you, I say take it. And you know what, folks, if you're listening and you think it's your dead Uncle Paul, or you think it's the neighbor's dog or anything else, if that brings you peace and focuses you through a moment and gets you through a hard time, I say knock it out of the park. I say that's great. So only you know you. You're the only person that can scare you and do all these imagination tricks on you. Yeah, the world tries hard to do that, but it comes right down to you being. We know that people can do extraordinary things in amazing circumstances, right? This is what I'm talking about. If your brain's speaking to you and it's healthy, go with it. If your dog is speaking to you and telling you that you got to wipe out the neighbors, you know what I'm saying? Then you need a little bit of help. So I know you and I know how you function. I actually believe that there's probably times where your environment is trying to speak to you, Andy. I really do.
Interesting.
Yeah, and again, it goes to like I totally agree with what Greg said, where you say, am I using this for some good or does it bring me some
Exactly.
peace? We have the owls that live in our yard, and that was my wife's thing was like, oh my gosh, it's a sign from this, and that's a new this and other. It's like, well, also San Marcos, California is literally known for a massive population of these great
Right.
horned owls.
Right.
And we have like the exact type of place that they would want to go to. So like, is it all that, or is it just the fact that we're here? And I love it. I think that's where beauty, art, and culture comes from. That's where those stories emanate from. Where I'm like, well, the chances of one coming here are actually really, really high. So probably just that, but yeah, same thing, and we sometimes we come in and you have a feeling and someone else, and then they come in and tell you this story, and then what do? We do the,
Mhm.
oh, you're
Well,
right. Yeah, I heard that high
exactly.
pitched voice too. That was totally a kid's voice. And you're like, okay. Like now we start adding to the story a little bit. So, but it's typically all in good fun. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
as long as it's in good fun, there's
Right.
nothing wrong with that. So
Yeah, yeah, and I agree. So we've kind of been hinting at this all along. Why do we as humans we find ghost stories and these urban legends so fascinating? I mean, life is fascinating enough on its own, but why are we attracted to these things?
Yep. So I think poems are wonderful, but being in love is the best poetry in the world. I think that movies, especially those that scare you, are incredible. I love them. But I think really being scared is amazing.
hmm
So I think we've learned that those most pure signal. I mean, like our CEO is also my wife, and I'm very lucky. We've been married 40 years. I remember the first time I saw Shelley, and people go, "Well, do you believe in love at first sight?" Yeah, it's called oxytocin. It's a drug, and it hit me right between my eyes like an axe handle. I was in love. I'm still absolutely in love. My favorite person in the entire world is my wife. So fear works that way too. And it's fun to be scared. Why do we go to haunted houses?
Yeah.
Why do we go out and create Dia de la Muerte
I know what
put
you're
our
saying.
do our front lawns and make skeletons for Halloween because we like that. We like going to one of the places that your kids feel completely safe is Disney, and they have the Haunted Mansion even at Disney. So Pirates of the Caribbean, they just recently took that down and sold a bunch of the things. But before the movie Pirates of the Caribbean, that was a scary place, wasn't it? So
Hmm.
I think humans love that rush
It,
of adrenaline and epinephrine and endorphins. And I think the more we get that, the more we seek it out.
and there's one you just reminded me of, Greg, is a guy, I forget what he does, but he's a, modern day sort of philosopher, the guy Richard Dawkins, super
Oh
smart
yeah,
guy, but
Dawkins.
he's
Hmm.
like an
Hmm.
ardent, like, I'm an atheist, there is no God, there's, blah, blah, blah. It's all about science all the time. This is what it is. But here's the thing, I will not stay at certain places because I think they're haunted. And you're like, wait a minute. So
There we go.
the ghost you think is there, but like not a higher being, not a god. Like, okay, like, I mean, but it just shows you how humans are, right? How illogical we can be, or
Yeah.
how counterintuitive we can be to our own way of thinking and viewing things. So it's funny, but like Greg said, is like we love that experience, right? We love going to the movie and it's really scary, but then we know the lights are going to come back on at the end and everything's going to be okay. So we're
Right.
we're drawn to that. We're wired that way.
Very cool. So, as we kind of wrap up here, guys, I'll ask you this, Greg. You kind of brought up this topic. What is a horror movie that really scared you, whether as a kid or as an adult? I'll go first to give you some time to think about
Yeah,
it.
please.
Growing up, I did not like the Child's Play movies, Chucky, where
Chucky.
Mhm.
the doll comes to life and stabs people brutally.
Right.
Because of course, being a kid, I had toys, and like I was afraid that they were going to come to life, which is funny now because kids now think when their toys come to life, it's Toy Story from Disney. When I was growing up, the
Oh
toys came to
yeah.
life and killed you. That's what
Yeah.
the thing was. And plus the hero in the movie's name was Andy. And so that
Yeah.
even freaked me out even
Yeah.
worse. So,
There you
what's
go.
some horror movies that really kind of scared you guys?
So here's the thing. If we have time later on the show or after the show, I've got a real life ghost story to tell you that happened to me. So my favorite film of the season is an old Boris Karloff black and white called Isle of the Dead from 1947. And the reason is it's so plausible. It's like imagining that the Spanish flu, in this instance, a form of the plague, comes to this already war decimated area, and these people have to learn how to survive. And there's so much fear. I don't want to ruin it for anybody because it's a
Mhm.
very short, right, straight to the point film. But I love horror where you could believe that it could happen to you.
Mhm.
So I'm entertained by zombie films. There's not going to be a Zompoc. But
Yeah.
you talk about a disease like COVID, it
Mhm.
changed the entire world, Andy. There's my horror
Yeah.
story. 2.5 years of stuff that's still scaring people. But folks, look it up. Amazing. I don't like butcher horror films. This is a think piece, and it'll scare your pants up. Have the lights on in the room. Have somebody else home when you watch it.
So
All right, Brian.
I didn't have like a ton that I would super, scare me. I was always kind of like in the moment of this is a movie, so I never
Right.
really typically. But
Mhm.
like as a kid, I do remember being young watching. My older cousins had watched Children of the Corn, and
Yeah.
that terrified me. Because I was pretty young too, and I was like, this is so scary. This is absolutely terrifying. But kind of like as I got older, like I'll watch stuff now, and it's more like I'm like, whoa, like, or it's exciting, but like I don't get into the like scary, like got to turn the lights on. It just sort of doesn't really affect me as much, I guess.
That's
Okay.
great.
That's cool. That's cool. I'm glad that you can separate that. I'm not that
No, oh, don't
intelligent
get me
there.
wrong. You still get that feeling of like after you watch something like that and you're going outside and it's dark and there's no lights on, you're kind of like it still hits you like, wait,
That's so
okay,
funny.
what did I just watch? What did I just see? And then I'll go turn the light on or something. But like don't do it, it still affects me in that way, but not to the point where it's like, oh, I remember the super scary movie and I was terrified of it, other than Children of the Corn. That definitely definitely terrified me.
Very cool. Guys, thank you so much for entertaining this particular line of questioning and kind of the stuff that we're getting into for the Halloween spirit, where can folks find out more about you for non-ghost related things?
Non-ghost or ghost related stuff if you want.
Yep.
Arcadia Cognerati is the name of our company, and then, as you know, we have the Left of Greg podcast where we talk about different different events or different topics, all kind of around this lenses of human behavior and human performance, and how you kind of sense making problem solve in your environment. So if you check out Left of Greg podcast, you probably find something that they'd like. And then otherwise come to our website, arcadiacognerati.com, or Instagram, where you get to learn a little bit about some human behavior on that as well.
Very cool, gentlemen. I appreciate your time as always. I appreciate you being on the show. Thank you for your friendship, and thank you for all that you are doing to help the world become a safer place.
Thank you so much, Andy. We appreciate it.
Okay, so that will officially end the show. So, Greg, you kind of teased us here a second ago and said you had a ghost story.
Yep.
Do you feel like sharing it?
I will share it.
Okay.
It's my favorite ghost story, and it happened to Shelly and I. So I have a witness, and I can give you facts. And so I don't believe in anything. You know that. I mean, you've talked to me before about UFOs and strange lights and the gosh damn what a Bigfoot. So it's. Shelly and I are flying to Denver for a business meeting from Detroit. Our plane gets diverted to New Mexico, and we end up having to land at, I think it's called Kirtland Air Force Base, because not only is Denver snowed in, but New Mexico's snowed in, and the only thing big enough that's not snowed in to take us is this Air Force Base. So they give us buses to try to get us to the airport. Everything's closing. They actually have these freeway big ramp things that come across and close the freeway. And so we're like, we're never going to get up to look at the ranch. We're going to look at the ranch we ultimately bought and had a dude and guest ranch for 13 years. So I go to the rental car place and I flip the guy $100 and I go, anything with 4-wheel drive, we got to get out. We leave, and we only go a very short distance before every road is closed. We start using surface trails. Shelly's on the map, and we get caught up in a place called Las Vegas, New Mexico. So the only place open in Las Vegas, New Mexico is the Historic Plaza Hotel. That's the name of the place, Historic Plaza Hotel. And a lot of people that may watch movies or television, the film Vampires, No Countries for Old Men, Longmire, all those have been filmed there because it's the spookiest place on the face of the planet. Across the street is this massive 1800 cemetery, and across the street on the other side is Our Lady of Sorrows Church, which is the scariest place in the world, right? So we go in, and it's the only place open. We're the only people there, other than the few people that got caught by the storm, that are inside. We go in. I say, hey, do you have some food? No, but we can get you some coffee. And we got some pastries that are left over. Can we get a room? Yeah, you can get a room. Is any restrictions or something? No. But I'll tell you, you may be here a couple of days. This storm, 144 inches of snow fell on the Colorado-New Mexico border. Imagine that in New Mexico. So Shell and I go up to the room. We're waiting for the lady to bring up the coffee. We're trying to get the kids on an old rotary-style landline phone, and our suite mate is in there, and we can hear him singing and yakking and taking a shower. And we're like, okay, somebody else that got caught up by the road. And so we wait, and finally, it's like 30 minutes in, and this guy's still taking a shower, and we're hearing all the noises associated with a shower. Knock on the door, open the door. Guy's got 2 pots of coffee, 2 beautiful cheesecakes, and we go, hey, no offense, but could you tell our suite mate we'd like to take a shower too? Dude goes, you're not in a suite. And we're like, well, somebody's in the bathroom right now. Guy goes, there's nobody else in the hotel. And we're here, and you're here, and that's it. Goes over, turns the handle, which was previously locked because I was trying to sneak a peek, opens the door, showers soaked, the steam, the rain, there's a gosh darn towel that's hanging up, and that's it. There's nothing in that room. So I got shivers relating it right now. And I said, oh my gosh. And the guy goes, well, it's not unprecedented. He said, you're in Bob Ford's room. And Bob Ford is the guy that killed Jesse James. And Bob Ford used to go around after he killed Jesse James for 10 years acting it out, and people would pay him. He was like a playwright and an actor. And he goes, this was his favorite room. So that was the creepiest part of this ghost story. We finally get through to Colorado, and as far as we can get to the ranch when another storm hit was Creede, Colorado. We go into a bar. to get a bite to eat at Creed, Colorado. The bar and restaurant's the only thing that's there. And there's a plaque on the seat that Shelley's sitting on dedicated to Edward O'Kelly, the man that shot Bob Ford to death in the very place that we're eating in Creed, Colorado.
Crazy.
So you like M theory, you like string theory, you like all that other stuff. I don't know if you can see me, but my goosebumps are all over the place because that was a message. Now look, we could probably sit down and study game theory and physics and go back through and say all of those things were just happenstance. But I tell you to this day, when that guy said you're not in a suite, wow. And so I remember days. I remember how many inches of snow. I remember the address of the damn hotel because it was that right up in my face.
Goodness, man, that is nuts. And to see all the, man, that's crazy. So
Yeah.
like, wow. So yeah, I don't know what to think with you guys. I'm not sure if I believe in ghosts or anything like that. I
Right.
will say that I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'll admit that something else could be there
Yep.
beyond what I know, kind of like what you were saying earlier. Yeah, man, but that's creepy. That is creepy.
I've had some creepy things. That one has stuck with me for just over 30 years now.